Thank you very much.
7:15. As we've been hearing today, coronavirus is casting a shadow over the build-up to both Scotland and England's final group matches in the Euros tonight. First, Scotland's Billy Gilmour tested positive for the virus, so he can't play in their game against Croatia.
And England's Ben Chilwell and Mason Mount are in isolation because they'd hugged and chatted to Gilmour after the sides met at Wembley on Friday, so they are both unlikely to feature against the Czech Republic.
Let's discuss some of the issues around this with Mark Palios, former FA boss, and Professor Linda Bold, Public Health, who we spoke to on the programme yesterday, back in Edinburgh today. Lovely to speak to you again.
Morning.
Mark, let's come to you first of all. There are a number of our viewers this morning, a number of people, both in football and outside of football, who are scratching their heads today over the decision to isolate these two England players, and yet the rest of Billy Gilmour's Scotland teammates are carrying on as if nothing's happened.
Yeah, I think I'm with them as well. I'm scratching my head as to how it's happened. If I look at the statement of the website in terms of what the FA have said, I think it's slightly inconclusive in as much they are taking cautions. I'm not sure that they've actually formally isolated them, and it said discussions are still going on with the PHE. So it may be that what they've looked at, whilst these symptoms don't show, we make sure so they don't actually have any sort of further contagion within the squad. Maybe just that they're being ultra cautious and things will unravel during the day or so.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see a bit, won't we? Linda, let's talk to us a little bit about what the guidelines are for so-called close contact.
Sure, Louise. So we know that Billy Gilmour, the Scottish player, doesn't have any symptoms. So they will be looking very carefully at the 24 hours before that positive test result came out. And they contact tracers look at a variety of things. It's more complex than just the duration of contact. So the classic definition you can find on the NHS website, for example, is around, within 2 metres or around 2 metres for 15 minutes or more. And then closer than that, if you're very close, within 1 metre face-to-face, it can be any duration at all, could be of concern. And then if it's around 1 metre, and face-to-face, then you're looking at about a minute or more. So they'll also be looking at, is it indoors or is it outdoors? What was the environment like, etc. So those are all factors. It's not just the simple minutes. And as Mark was saying, if the England squad have taken that decision just on the basis of what happened in the match, because match play isn't normally a mechanism for isolation outdoors, then there may be other factors they're also pondering.
And in terms of the sort of testing that goes alongside that, Linda, we know that England have a lateral flow test. I think all the players took a lateral flow test after the game, which was negative. And they also have PCR tests before matches, which are organised by UEFA. So they're in quite a rigorous testing system.
Yes, and I'm obviously not being an expert in football, but very interested in elite sport, because from a public health perspective, we wanted to look at what was happening across the sector, and they are routinely using PCR. So that looks for genetic material in the virus. It's far more sensitive and specific than the lateral flows, and they are required to regularly use PCR testing. So again, the statement for UEFA, I would agree with Mark, is a wee bit confusing because they just mentioned their lateral flows, but I imagine the two England players will also, if they've not already had a PCR in the last 24 hours, will be having one very soon.
Yeah, Mark. Let's just talk about the sort of impact, actually, because it's it's countdown to the game and it affects everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a nightmare generally because of the way you're trying to protect it from injuries that you get from the match. But this is an overlay that you just simply do not want to have. And of course, it's almost like throwing a pebble into a pond out, and immediately, despite the fact that people probably will be adhering to the goals in the camp, you will automatically have concerns, and people will just, people are people, they will transgress, and therefore you might suddenly find that they are pulled out as well. And you're out for 10 days, so I mean that's going to have an impact. Whilst we've qualified tonight, and that's why I think what possibly is happening, that they're saying, well, okay, if we've qualified already, then tonight isn't that important, subject to who you end up playing against. But it's one of those things that is everybody's getting on with it. But you've got to be cautious, and that's what the FA are doing.
Obviously, we're looking at the sort of public health aspect of this, but Mark, just to touch on the sort of practical football nature of this as well, because we know that England have already gone through, as you mentioned. Scotland need to beat Croatia to make it through.
It's one of those things. It's the manager's call, and he'll make decisions on that. But as you say, it's an interesting problem. Do you go out to win it, or do you go out to try out players that haven't actually had a kick the ball yet?
Very interesting. Linda, also, let's just talk about fans from a fan's perspective as well, because there's one thing going on, with the squads, isn't it? But also from the fans' point of view, many fans are going, and there is a testing system in place. Will people be looking at what happens with regard to fans?
Absolutely, and we've already had extensive discussion of this, not just in relation to the Euros. I think there are a couple of things. People just need to recognise that, this infection, the virus has not gone away. We're actually seeing rising levels of infection in some parts of the UK at the moment. We have had over 10,000 cases a day in the last little while. So the fans just need to recognise that, obviously, if they're watching outdoors, particularly in Wembley, etc., where there is testing, there's minimal risk there, but it's more the interaction on public transport, if they're going indoors or they're sharing a vehicle, etc. It's just about being careful. And I'm really hoping that these mass gatherings and all the things associated with them will not contribute to rise in infections, but they might. And people need to remember they need to be very, very careful, because we still are in a situation where, as I say, the infection is still there, and also it's more affecting younger people who haven't had both doses of a vaccine, and many of those, of course, will be the ones who are really interested in watching the matches.
OK, and what about you, Linda? Are you going to be watching tonight?
Well, I know that family members are very excited, and I'll be trying to catch up on some of it. But it's an anxious time, both for England and for Scotland. And I think everybody just wishes both teams all the best.
I love that we're getting everybody to comment on football today. Thank you.
Don't worry, Linda. You don't have to be a football fan. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Mark Palios and Linda Ball, thank you both very much indeed.
I'm not sure the lovely Linda is too bothered by the result tonight, but Scotland fans will be missing Billy Gilmore. But they will be still roaring on the team. We know that.
Yeah, Alexandra Mackenzie is with some young footballers in Glasgow who'll be...
Hello, good morning. Just gone 7:30. You're watching Breakfast with Louise and Dan.